Hey guys, our friend Marshall Kosloff, he's going to be conducting interviews with experts and newsmakers for us here on the Breaking Points channel. We're really excited.
Yep, here it is.
Hey, Jules, welcome back to Breaking Points.
Hey, Marshall. Good to see you again.
Yeah, I chatted with you for my first ever segment, I believe. We were talking about how you went to the White House as a TikTok influencer to discuss like the importance of alternate forms of news. And I thought you were the perfect person to talk about this big story with TikTok a little earlier in the week, which basically relates to TikTok having access to personal data. Can you just explain what's really happened? You've done some great coverage of the topic.
Yeah, so what seems to be happening is there were about 80 internal meetings leaked from TikTok, and it seems to be throughout the period of when Trump was trying to ban the app, which was summer of 2020 into the fall of 2020. And of course, that conversation has still lasted up until today. So it's been about 2 years now that this has been going on. So it was 80 leaked audios from these meetings, coverage of basically saying that China still had access to a lot of, if not all of the data. So that's not just in terms of, age and names of users and everything like that. That goes as far as deleted drafts within the app. So super personal stuff. For people who don't know, an app like Snapchat, a lot of young people use that as their default camera app. And you save that to your Snapchat camera roll. And TikTok is kind of slowly becoming similar to that. So the stuff that you have in your drafts that you don't even intend on putting out into the world is very personal stuff a lot of the time. So it is pretty crazy that an app like China can have access to that. So a lot of these meetings were actually apparently also through September 2021 all the way up until January 2022 was the most recent one, I believe. So that's just 5-6 months ago. And at that point, China still had a lot of access to the data, and it's unclear right now if that is still the case. But apparently TikTok put out a statement last week that a lot of the data has moved over finally to Oracle, which is again has been in the works for 2 years. But even it's still concern having data for the past 3 years on a lot of America's youth, because now TikTok has surpassed Instagram and Gen Z users. It has 100 million US users, and it's also surpassed YouTube in watch time, so basically time spent on the app. So just the past 3 years alone, having data on that for China is huge.
And I'm just curious, this is a difficult question for you because TikTok is how you got to the White House. What's your personal take on whether or not TikTok should be allowed in the United States?
Yeah, so it is an interesting situation of the app has a lot of pros and cons. The app has basically 180'd my life and career in a lot of ways. But I remember back in summer 2020 when Trump had announced the possible ban, I felt indifferent in the way that I do now. Not indifferent in the way that I don't care. I care a lot. I'm fascinated by all of this stuff, and I feel strongly about a lot of different parts of it. But it was one of those things where I can't yet tell if it is a net positive or a net negative on humanity. And in the US, I honestly sway towards net negative. So when it comes to privacy concerns, I 100% honestly agree with a ban on TikTok, because in the way that WhatsApp, Facebook, Google, and YouTube are all not allowed in China, it's like the Great Firewall. Apps like WeChat and like TikTok that have huge US user bases are still allowed here. And those two apps were what Trump was trying to get rid of in the US. When people try to take the route of the psychological effects of TikTok, that's when have a little bit of pushback, because you see Instagram and you see YouTube trying to copy exactly what TikTok is doing because they are winning the attention economy. So even if TikTok gets banned, those psychological effects are going to end up trickling into those apps as well. So then we get into the conversation of, are we going to ban bottomless feeds in the US? Are we going to have opening and closing hours on social media? All of these different things. But when it comes to the privacy conversations, I completely understand why we would ban TikTok in the US.
I like the way you put it in terms of delineating between those psychological effects, attention economy debates, and the actual who owns and operates and controls this company bit. Because something that you see people say all the time is wait a second, Facebook does all sorts of things too.
Yeah.
So does whatever Microsoft's owned by Snapchat. The key difference though is that these are largely speaking, American companies. I know they're global companies, but they're also American companies and are subject to US laws. So for example, if we don't like what's being done with the data privacy, with the opening and closing hours, all those different bits, you can pass laws affecting that. With
Mhm.
TikTok, that's different. So I think it's just really important to like explain the difference there and just answer. I get why people kind of bring it up because it doesn't seem to make any sense, but there's just a difference in accountability here.
Oh, 100%. And TikTok in China, the relationship that the app in China is called Douyin. Of course, like they have a different app than we have. Like we're not seeing the Chinese users' content. But what's been interesting in TikTok in China, they have 4 different things that they are using to target their youth. It's called youth mode. They have opening and closing hours on TikTok in China for people under 16, I believe. It's like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. No one is allowed to access the app. So it's kind of this collective experience so kids don't experience FOMO together. There is a 5-second pause between every few videos to like get kids out of that hypnosis. There is within the algorithm, they purposely put in like edutainment STEM content, while in the US, algorithm is very much a reflection of like your subconscious, basically. Whatever you're giving the most watch time to is exactly what you're being fed. And also, I believe it's like you can only spend 40 minutes straight on the app in China, which seems like a no-brainer. Like, why do you need to be spending more than 40 minutes straight on a platform like TikTok? Because of that hypnosis aspect of things. So yeah, they're definitely, I mean, in China, they feel a lot of the same ways that we do about our tech companies and those psychological effects. Sometimes they feel like they can't rein kids in and they can't rein these psychological effects in. I know they also targeted video games. Like I think kids right now are only allowed in China to play, I think it's like 2 hours of video games over the weekend. I don't know how they enforce that. I'm sure there's a million ways around that. But that's been interesting to see as well.
And something I'm curious about then is what is the real difference, especially in the US, between TikTok and like the Instagram/Snapchat, even YouTube now has YouTube Shorts. So YouTube in its own way is becoming much more like TikTok. So
Yeah.
why is it that the American companies have not been able to catch up as well?
Oh my God. Like there are so many little cultural elements of TikTok that are just so hyper personalized. So yes, it's more fun in the way something like YouTube, it's really hard to use different audios. So that's what like TikTok started as Musically. So it was focused on music. We know that like the stereotype against TikTok was like, oh, it's a dancing app. It was more so like that 3 years ago. So the audios was what really reined people in. The algorithm is so hyper personalized and you're not on platforms like Instagram, on platforms, even like Twitter. Twitter, you follow some more strangers, but Instagram, you're mostly following like friends and family. You follow some like maybe mega celebrities or whatever that you're super interested in. On a platform like TikTok, you're following all strangers because the For You page that's being fed to you is all strangers content. And also in that way, you internalize that, oh, if I post, it'll probably be only strangers that see my content, and people post really personal stuff on there too. And the more personal people get, the more entertaining that is, right? So there's just so many different cultural elements that make TikTok as big as it is today. It's of course shorter content, it's a bottomless feed, and we see that its power is moving all the way into like people are using it as a search engine, specifically within fashion, beauty, cooking, and traveling. And those may seem like trivial things, but a lot of those things we see how like user behavior starts within those areas and then it trickles into bigger areas of life like politics and everything like that. So to think TikTok could end up being a search engine is pretty crazy as well.
And I'm curious, you've done a lot of interesting reporting on just the implications of what these digital footprint conversations look like for younger people. So we were talking before the recording. My version of this was when I got on Facebook in 2007, the whole thing, because we were in high school and underage, was like, oh man, like I hope that no one tags me in a picture where there's a can of beer in the background.
Yep.
It feels as if we've solved that. It would be weird even in like today's context, now that I'm 30 years old and not under 21, for someone to just walk around taking pictures of everything and then just uploading them. Like that really feels like something that wouldn't be chill. It's also way easier to just untag yourself. And it's kind of funny, even like Facebook, not that I even really use Facebook anymore. Facebook will like notify you if like they think you're in a photo that's been uploaded online because the AI could scan your face. So that's kind of how we've dealt with that. What do you think about what the implications are for like younger people who are coming up on TikTok rather than on Facebook like I did?
We're going to see a weird period. I would say, so I'm 24 right now. So I would say probably towards my late 20s, early 30s, when most of Gen Z is in their 20s and early 30s, what we're going to see, I think, is a lot of content that we posted, in high school, in our early 20s resurface. I think the first taste of that we saw was with Madison Cawthorn, when those like weird videos that his friends took resurfaced on Twitter. And he's younger, I think he's like 26 or something. I think there was like a hint of what we're going to see in the future. So people are posting more personal content than ever on TikTok, which is a weird paradox in the way that it is through the most intimate form of content, video. So like you are showing your full identity. It is very much feels authentic in real time. So it's this weird paradox, but it has to do with feeling like only strangers are going to see your content internally. So we're going to see a lot of content arise, and it's weird in the way that we're talking about, this data and TikTok situation, because there was an article that came out a few days ago as well that the FBI has access to like deleted TikTok videos. They're able to inquire about that, to utilize it in different situations. And the thought that even your drafts, again, things that you might not have intended to ever put out, is also considered data. And that's probably even way more personal than things that you actually put out. And that is able to be accessed by people. Are we going to see weaponization of that? Are we going to see, that being low-key planted in certain areas when Gen Z gets into politics and is, running for different offices? Like, are we going to see those things arise? I think in those situations, there's going to be an element of like empathy or even dilution, because we're going to be, right now we see so much with cancel culture, but a lot of us are realizing the culture changes so much every 5 years. Something that we think is so normal now is probably going to be looked at as insane in 5-10 years. And also we change so much year to year. So I think there's going to be some empathy amongst our generation, because we're all going to have that trail. But there's definitely going to be a few years where it's going to be really interesting, entertaining, crazy to watch it unfold.
Yeah, so just to sum everything up, obviously you're not a policymaker, so you can't perfectly predict whether or not these continual data leaks, basically the quote unquote nightmare scenario that was really warned about, you're not going to predict whether that will change things. But I'm curious, how do you think this tension is going to continue to play out? Like, are we just going to probably keep seeing these instances? Is this going to put a pressure point on policymakers? How do you really see that going?
I do think it's going to be something that we just like have to go through and push through. And it's going to be something I think the generation under us, what was like Gen Alpha and even our kids, are going to value privacy a lot more, because watching that type of stuff unfold, I would hope that would be the like ideal scenario. I think it's just something that for like 2, 3, 4 years, we're just going to see it unravel, because not even just in terms of like people on the back end having our data. When you put something out there on a platform like TikTok, how something can go viral overnight, when you delete something, your hands aren't washed all of a sudden. There are people who downloaded that content because they thought it was entertaining or that they thought it was funny, and they say that to their camera roll. They don't know who you're going to be in the future. They could be going through their camera roll and be like, oh my gosh, that's this person who is in this position now, and I want to resurface this online, even though it's deleted. And you lose ownership over your content the second you post it, especially on something like TikTok, where it can be seen by, again, millions, thousands overnight, screen recorded, again, saved to camera roll. So
very well said. Jules, thank you for joining. I know that you're not going to have to talk about this pretty much forever, because this is always going to be a tension point, especially for the Biden administration. Like, look, my quick thing is, I suspect the reason why it just hasn't been banned is that, like, because Biden's performing so poorly with young people, they just don't want to add another. Because look, like, I support the ban. I think it was the right policy. Folks in the Biden administration have indicated they agree with that policy, much in the same way they continued Trump's tariffs. But I just think at a political level, the last thing you want to add to just like the current youth low point is really just a TikTok ban, because let's get real for a second. Like, this whole serious geopolitical data privacy debate, it's not going to translate to, I think, everyday voters, especially, well, at least with young people. I suspect like older voters would support the policy, but younger voters who have an enthusiasm issue are not going to be supportive, obviously.
Yeah, I almost feel like I might even disagree. It's weird, because people have a very toxic relationship with TikTok, but it more so goes back to the psychological effects. A lot of young people, I sense, would feel relief if it was banned, mostly because of the psychological effects and people just being genuinely addicted to the platform. It's a running joke on the TikTok platform of like being addicted to it almost. It's become like a meme. But then it goes again to, okay, these other platforms are just trying to copy it. So we'll see. But I agree that a ban makes most sense for privacy reasons. Yeah.
Well said. Jules, thanks for joining us on Breaking Points.
Thank you so much, Marshall.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.